The cardiovascular system, or circulatory system, consists of the heart, blood vessels, and blood. The purpose of the cardiovascular system is to carry substances to cells, such as glucose, nutrients, and oxygen, and to carry waste products away from those cells, such as carbon dioxide. Blood also contains cells that help us fight disease. Altogether, this helps us to maintain homeostasis and live. As stated previously, one of the major roles of the cardiovascular system is delivering and removing materials from the body. Substances that are needed in the body are transported by the blood. Oxygen and glucose will be carried to cells of the body through the bloodstream and will pass through the capillaries to these other cells. The blood also picks up waste from cells and carries it to the organs of excretion. For example, carbon dioxide will be picked up from cells in other organs and be carried to the lungs so that it can be exhaled from the body. The ability to fight disease also goes back to the cardiovascular system. Cells are transported through the blood that can attach to diseases and kill these diseases, helping us remain healthy. The major organ of the cardiovascular system is the heart. The heart pumps blood throughout the body. It is a muscle. It's located behind the sternum in your chest and is about the size of a fist. Each time the heart beats, it pushes blood through the blood vessels of the cardiovascular system. It's made of cardiac muscle and can contract over and over again throughout your entire life. The structure of the heart is as follows. It has two sides, a left side and a right side. The right side of the heart is separated from the left side of the heart by a septum, which is a tissue. Each side of the heart has two compartments, or chambers. The upper chamber is called the atrium. The atrium of the heart will always receive the blood that is coming into the heart. The lower chamber is referred to as the ventricle. This chamber will pump blood out of the heart and elsewhere, either to the lungs or out to other parts of the body. The atrium and the ventricles are separated by valves. These valves are very important because they will open and close, allowing blood to pass between them. However, once blood has entered either the atrium or the ventricle, it will close so that blood cannot flow backwards, only forward. The heart works in two main phases. The first phase is when the muscles of the heart will relax and the heart fills with blood. Then the atria of the heart will begin to contract, sending blood into the ventricles and moving the heart into the second phase. During this phase, the heart muscles will contract and squeeze blood out. The ventricles, at this point, are contracting, closing the valves, and squeezing the blood into vessels outside of the heart. Heartbeat sounds can be heard during the second phase, also known as the pumping phase. When ventricles contract, it exerts forces on the blood, which pushes the blood out of the heart into the arteries. The arteries, as we know, carry blood away from the heart. So think of arteries in a way, always associated together because they start with the same letter. The left ventricle actually creates more force when it pumps blood out because it has to send blood throughout the entire body. The right ventricle only sends blood to the lungs, which is a much shorter distance. Think about sending blood all the way up to your head and then down to your toes. You'll need a lot more force in the beginning to get that blood going than you do to get blood from your heart to your lungs, which are only about a few inches apart. To regulate your heartbeat, there are a group of cells called the pacemaker. They're going to send out signals that make the heart muscles contract. Now, your pacemaker relies on information about oxygen to decide how fast your heart needs to beat. It can adjust the heart rate to match the oxygen need of the body. So, for example, when you're exercising and you need more oxygen in your body, your pacemaker sends out signals to make your heart beat faster. However, it is possible for there to be damage to the pacemaker, and an artificial pacemaker may need to be installed in a person. This usually only happens when an individual is older and there usually are other issues with the heart previously to the pacemaker no longer working correctly. The heart follows two pathways or loops in which it passes its blood. The first loop is when the blood travels from the heart to the lungs and then back to the heart. So at the beginning of this loop, we have deoxygenated blood, and at the end, we have oxygenated blood. The second loop pumps blood from the heart to the rest of the body and returns it to the heart. Let's look at loop 1. When blood enters the right atrium of the heart, it has very little oxygen in it. The blood at this point is a deep red because it contains more carbon dioxide than it does oxygen. The blood is then pumped into the right ventricle. The ventricle will pump blood through the arteries out to the lungs. As it flows to the lungs, the blood will pass through blood vessels and will branch into smaller ones, eventually reaching capillaries. Oxygen and carbon dioxide will be exchanged in the capillaries. As we know about diffusion, which is how oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged, it's going to go from an area of high concentration to low concentration. So, when the blood gets to the lungs, it has a high concentration of carbon dioxide and a low concentration of oxygen. So the oxygen will move from the lungs into the bloodstream, and the carbon dioxide will move from the blood into the lungs. The blood will then flow back to the left side of the heart. Now in loop 2, the blood is receiving oxygen-rich blood. It's going to go to the left atrium. Then the blood will be pumped into the left ventricle. From the left ventricle, the blood is pumped into the aorta, which is one of the biggest arteries within the body. The aorta branches and sends blood to capillaries all over the body. Once again, diffusion will occur. However, this time, the oxygen content is higher inside the capillaries than it is in the tissues. So, the oxygen will move from the capillaries into the tissue, and the tissue will give the blood carbon dioxide. The blood will then return back to the heart and continue into loop 1. Blood is passed through the body through a variety of different vessels. There are 3 different vessels that we've discussed, which are arteries, capillaries, and veins. The first one we're going to talk about today is arteries. Arteries are the vessels in which blood leaves the heart and travels. So, you can think of arteries and away from the heart together. Blood travels away through the arteries. The right ventricle pumps blood into arteries that will send it to the lungs. The left ventricle will pump blood into the aorta, which is also an artery. Smaller arteries will branch off of the aorta. The first branch off of the aorta is the coronary arteries, which carry blood back to the heart. Other branches will carry blood to the brain, intestines, and other organs of the body, so that they can receive oxygen-rich blood. Arteries are thick. They have 3 layers. The first layer is smooth muscle tissue, which allows blood to flow freely through it. The middle layer is muscle, and the outer layer is a flexible connective tissue. Arteries are very strong and flexible and can withstand a lot of pressure from the heart. Your pulse is caused by alternating expansion and relaxation of the artery walls. Every time a ventricle contracts, it sends a spurt of blood through your arteries of the body. When this happens, it pushes on the artery walls, making them expand. However, when the blood passes through that artery and moves on within the body, it will relax, and the arteries will become narrow again. The alternating extension and relaxation creates your pulse that you feel. If you count the number of artery pulses, you can actually determine what your heartbeat is at that given time. Capillaries are the second type of vessels that we're going to talk about today. In capillaries, materials are exchanged between the blood and the body cells. The reason behind that is because capillaries are only one cell thick, so materials can easily pass through them. Oxygen and glucose are going to pass from the blood to the cells, and waste, such as carbon dioxide, will pass from the cells back into the blood. And this is going to occur through diffusion. And you should remember what happens through diffusion. Remember, high concentration to low concentration. The last type of vessel in the body are the veins. So after the blood moves through the capillaries, it will enter a larger blood vessel, which are these veins. Veins carry blood back to the heart. So arteries are away, veins are back to the heart. Veins also have 3 layers, like the arteries do, with muscle in the middle layer. Veins are going to be thinner, however, than arteries. Veins are closer to the surface of the skin, so in order to have forceful contractions that will help blood pass back to the heart, the veins will actually rely on skeletal muscle. When that contracts, it causes the veins to get a surge of blood, which will send it back towards the heart. Large veins also have valves in them which prevent blood from flowing backwards. You don't want deoxygenated blood going back into the heart, with the heart thinking that it's oxygenated, because then it won't be able to give the necessary oxygen to those tissues. Finally, the pressure from breathing in our chest can cause blood to be forced towards the heart in veins that are located inside of our chest. So once again, muscles and pressure are helping force the veins to bring blood the proper way.